right now, it's free. It's fair. You're allowed to give guys whatever you want to give them. And you do, because you want them to play for your team and you want to win games. But now that every single NIL deal could potentially be scrutinized, it welcomes bad actors back into the game. And if they don't want this NIL deal to be scrutinized, then they'll just pay someone under the table. Hello and welcome. It is always college football. Today is Monday, June 9th, and we appreciate those of you that are coming to us from wherever it is you're coming to us from, whether it's via the podcast platform, any podcast platform that is, Spotify, Apple Podcast, you name it. We're grateful to you for your support. Continue to subscribe, continue to download. We'll be in your inbox every single opportunity that we can be in. For those of you that are here with us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page, hit that thumbs up button. We're going to have some fun today. Look, we love talking about the games. We love talking about the matchups, the aspects of how this team is going to take advantage of this team. We love the previews. We love ranking teams. We love ranking players. We love ranking position groups. All those things are the lifeblood of what it is we do. So shows like today are a little bit unique because today a lot of our focus is going to be on parts of the game that are off the field. And that's okay, because I think it's important to have a foundation and a knowledge about what's going on in the bigger picture of college football and how it affects college football. So today we'll talk a little bit about the House settlement in what was one of the great Friday news dumps of all time. The House settlement has officially been approved. We will walk you through what that means for college football. I think we've been able to kind of digest and interpret what it means for college sports, but how does it exclusively impact college football? That's how we will focus our attention today. We're also going to talk a lot about Ryan Day and his suggestion for the automatic qualifiers and why the Big Ten is worthy of having those 4 automatic qualifiers, if in fact that does get put in place in the new and expanded college football playoff that we're all assuming is coming next year. We have non-conference games that we're talking about, partly because of some of the things that Ryan Day laid out. And then we're also going to walk you through the new College Sports Commission, which is really beneficial. And I think probably maybe the biggest part of this new House settlement and how it could be impactful for your team, your conference, and for the sport that we all love so much. Let's kick things off with what happened on Friday and explain exactly what the House settlement was, what was agreed to, what was passed, and some of the holdup that led to it taking so long. So here's the framework of the House settlement that you need to know, okay? A couple of big takeaways. And we're not going to go into the weeds. We're not going to go into the legalese. I'm not a lawyer. I'm sure several of you that are listening are lawyers. So I am not equipped to be able to explain some of the parameters of the things that were passed on Friday afternoon, evening. But here's exactly, for those of you that have been under a rock for the last year, or maybe you were on a beautiful vacation for the last year and you're now coming back and starting to consume college football again or college sports again. Here's what went down, okay? I've seen a couple of hilarious, jaw-dropping, attention-grabbing, fear-mongering headlines. The end of amateurism as we know it. Okay, well, help me understand the last time college football was truly amateur. That would have been quite a while ago, and granted, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But college football has never really felt amateur, at least not in the modern era. So the end of amateurism as we know it is they're just trying to scare you. Don't worry about that. But what the House settlement really does is it allows direct athlete compensation and revenue sharing. So yes, that does mean technically the end of amateurism. But now we all have basically a revenue sharing cap that can be shared amongst all college athletes. Every school has $20.5 million that they can pay annually to their players that are at their institution. Now, what does that mean for college football? Well, it kind of means a lot of different things. Right now, college football accounts for about 75% of the athletic department's revenue. Therefore, the college athletes will get about 75%. The college football players will get about 75% of that $20.5 million. College basketball will get about 15%. And then the other sports will get about 10%. Now, it's a little different depending on the conference. So, for example, if you're in the Big East, then you don't have college football that you have to support. So your basketball programs are actually going to benefit greatly from all of this change that's going on. So we're not always college basketball. We're always college football. We're going to focus on how this impacts football. You're going to say, how did they land at that $20.5 million? Well, it's 22% of the average media right revenue. So that's ticket sales, sponsorships for the Power Four conferences. So 22%, and that's a number that we'll get back to here in just a little bit because some people deem that number to be inadequate when compared to the NBA, the NFL, and some of the other professional sports entities. One other aspect of the settlement is that $2.8 billion will be paid out to players that played in 2016 through 2024. So there'll be back pay. So that's another part of the conversation. But that's basically the fundamentals of what just went down on Friday. That's the financial aspect of it. But with that agreement comes some additional challenges. One of those additional challenges are roster limits. And this was arguably the biggest hurdle that needed to be cleared for the House settlement to be approved, because the roster limits right now in college football are around 128 players. It would take that 128 down to 105. So that's 23 players per school that would lose the opportunity to play college football if the House settlement was approved without any type of grandfather clause. So it gets a little bit confusing for the moment, but basically what we've known forever in college football is that there's 85 scholarships. That's not the case anymore. Everyone can be on scholarship if you so choose. Some conferences have already said we're sticking with 85. That's where we're going to be. And then we'll have 20 walk-ons, what have you. It's not really necessary to go into the details, but this was the biggest challenge. So the positives that come from roster limitations is that it increases the scholarship opportunities that you might find in other places. So for instance, in football, in time, not immediately, but in time, there might be 105 scholarships available, whereas in the past, it was just 85. We're not there right now, but maybe here 2, 3, 4 years down the road, that could be a real positive. And I think people are excited about that possibility. And then if you care about the other sports, a la college baseball, which is in the midst of their College World Series pursuit right now. 7 teams have punched their ticket to Omaha. 1 is still being decided between Duke and Murray State. That's at this exact moment. But they now will go from 11.7 scholarships to potentially 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, whatever it ends up being. Okay, so that's all really beneficial. We're also really happy, I think, in many ways that the compensation, there's some clarity now surrounding compensation. Now, it's not directly tied to roster limits, but this new system as a whole provides clarity for what rosters might actually cost in the future. And it also provides a streamlined operation for these athletic departments. But the big issue was that there would be many, many lost opportunities for players. I referenced the 128 to 105 just in football alone. Well, people were having a real hard time with that. And players were writing in to the judge and saying, yeah, I'm not going to be able to play football as a result of this decision. So they decided to implement a grandfather clause, which means players that are potentially at risk of losing their roster spot will receive a designation. It'll be a designated student athlete tag. And that student athlete tag will be included throughout their entire careers. So these players, they won't count against the cap. They can move freely. They can go play elsewhere, but they're able to play. And if they are the 106th player on a team in which roster limits are at 105, they won't count against the cap. So that's beneficial. That will obviously expire at some point here in the near future, but it is worth noting at least in the near term. I've been one that has kind of been very outspoken about roster limits. I can't be in favor of them. I was on a team with 85 scholarship players, but we had 125, 126, 27, 28 guys that were on the roster. And those 42, 43 guys that weren't on scholarship that practiced with us every day were vital to the college experience. I believe that the walk-on is as important as the starting quarterback. I've always felt that way. I think that's the beauty of the team, is that while, yes, they might not receive financial aid, they were every bit as part of the team as anyone else that had a jersey and that had NIL compensation and all these other aspects. Yes, they might in some cases graduate with student debt, but they were a part of the team. And they were part of the development process. And there are a million examples of stories in which guys went from walk-on to scholarship to star to NFL to crazy high levels of NFL. And the fear of that potentially going away was something that kind of kept me up at night, if I'm going to be completely honest. But now your fears and concerns can be put at ease, at least in the near term. Because of that grandfathered clause, these guys will still have the opportunity to play. Might not be at the school that they initially intended to go, but they at least will have that opportunity to play the rest of their years. But it is something worth noting here in the future that the walk-ons as we know it will not look exactly the same. But here's hoping that there will be loopholes and opportunities for those guys to still play college football, and maybe with limitations elsewhere, they can play at a different level and maybe get more opportunities at a different level. So we'll be curious to see exactly how that all impacts college football. And part of the reason why they want limitations is because they want competitive balance. And I really don't know at this point if there's ever going to be competitive balance in college football. Do I think that right now, and you guys might agree, you might disagree, right now, in the era pre-house settlement, it felt like those with the deepest pockets had the best opportunity to compete, right? It felt like those that could stockpile their roster with star talent and backfill their roster with experienced veterans from other schools, they were going to be put in the best situations to go and potentially win national championships. We saw that with Ohio State last year. Tremendously deep pockets, very well-funded resources. The team was stacked. They had great depth. They had great talent. They had superstar players, but they also had guys from other places that could fill in a moment's notice if the opportunity presented itself. So it did feel like in the NIL, maybe it wasn't quite as challenging for the teams with deep pockets to survive until the end of the season. Well, now with roster limits, guys it might be a little bit less likely to be annually amazing every single year. You might have some great years. You might have some years in which you fall back to the pack. I think Michigan last year is an example. They will put all their chips in. They went and won a national championship. And then last year, they came back to earth just a little bit. Now, I'm expecting big things from the Wolverines this year, but to expect annual domination is something that was a little bit far-fetched. Doesn't mean it's not achievable. We'll see what happens this year with Ohio State, for example, who still has a great roster, still has tremendous talent, but did lose an awful lot off last year's national championship team. So will there be more parity as a result of the roster limits and the new house settlement? That's the assumption. Do I think that's the reality? Probably not. I really don't. I think the best teams are still going to be the best teams. Now, will they annually be the best? Are there going to be years in which there's outliers and teams decide to go all in and maybe the stars align and they can make a run? Sure. But I still think those teams with the deepest pockets, the best resources, the best facilities, the best fan support, those are still going to be the teams that are competing annually at the top of college football. So I will be curious to see how this house settlement affects the quality of play and the parity that we experience right now in the sport. The other aspect of the house settlement that comes to the forefront is the new governance and enforcement that I am so excited about. Now, are there going to be loopholes? Perhaps. Will there be challenges in court? Probably. I don't even want to say probably. That's a guarantee. There's going to continue to be challenges in court. There will be people that are making cases against conferences, against schools, against just this whole system Then there'll be other sports that are trying to litigate as well. Like there's going to be challenges. There can be legal challenges for the foreseeable future in college football. And the judge essentially said, yeah, those challenges are allowed. And it'll be decided on a court-by-court basis and a judge-by-judge basis. So expect this to be challenged in many, many ways. But one thing that I'm very excited about, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, is the College Sports Commission. And essentially, what the College Sports Commission, it's a neutral authority comprised of the Power Four conferences where they all come in and they can enforce rules. They can try to create a level playing field. It basically is the new NCAA, but it's less corrupt, or so it seems right now. So the College Sports Commission, that's something we'll talk about here in just a little bit, but it's something that I'm very excited about. And one aspect of the College Sports Commission that I think we can all welcome is authentic NIL, as opposed to pay for play. Because right now it's pay for play. But it's not going to be, and I'll explain why here in just a minute, because of their new clearinghouse that has been developed because of this new College Sports Commission. So there's some positives that have come from this thing in the forefront. But I think this is a good step in the right direction to settling things down. A lot of people are going to kind of point and say, well, this is the end of college football as we know it. Sure. I mean, if that's the path that you want to take, if that's the hill you want to die on, by all means, I won't push back on it, because the college football that I played in back in 2007, 8, 9, 10 is very different than the college football that we experience now from 25, 26, 27, 28. Those are the years, by the way. So yes, it's very different. But when toe meets leather, tell me this. For those of you that are like, I'm disgusted by the direction that the sport is heading, or this just doesn't really do it for me, or for those of you that are all super gung-ho and fired up about what's just transpired and how the athletes are getting their cut and they're going to get their percentage and they're pleased with their percentage. Many people are not pleased with their percentage. They feel like it should be more than 22% of the overall revenue of the athletic department. But all those things considered, when toe meets leather, are you going to be there? In week 1, when LSU runs into Death Valley and they watch the Clemson Tigers run down the hill, are you going to be there on Saturday night, Labor Day weekend on ABC? On Sunday night, will you be there when Notre Dame is ready to take on the Miami Hurricanes there in Hard Rock Stadium on the Sunday before Labor Day? Will you be there when Alabama's hosting Wisconsin in week 3? I think you will be, because college football, while yes, the structure has changed. Yes, the way that athletes have the loyalty to the university has changed. Yes, it's become way more transactional than we've ever expected college football to be. When we actually kick the game off, it's still as good as it's ever been. So don't listen right now to those that are telling you, well, the game that we know is gone. The sport that we once loved is no longer. The college football that we grew up with will never be that way again. That's fine, but you choose to consume what you want to consume. If you aren't comfortable with pay for play, then you probably didn't pay attention to the off-season fodder that we've all been talking about on podcasts and on radio and on television for the last 4 months. But guess what? Come July, when we're at media days and we're talking about the Oklahoma running back room, you're probably going to be there, or at least I hope you're going to be there. You're still going to run to your local bookstore and you're going to buy that preseason magazine because you can't wait to read what the NC State Wolfpack are going to look like on defense this year. Like, we still love this sport, and we can still love this sport as much as we ever did, as long as we continue to focus on the things that led to us loving the sport. And that's the action that occurs between the white lines, between Team A and Team B, on a hostile environment on a fall Saturday on a college campus near you. So let's not go down the road of creating and inciting fear and considering that the game that we know and love is dead. It's not. It's still very healthy, and it will be again this fall here when we kick things off in Dublin between two Big 12 powerhouses. I referenced a moment ago the College Sports Commission. They've named Brian Seeley as the CEO of the new College Sports Commission. He comes from the Major League Baseball world, which I love, by the way, because Major League Baseball and college football to me are the most similar, where not every team in Major League Baseball has access to the same amount of resources. There's not a salary cap. So if you are willing to, as an owner, if you're willing to spend money on great players and stockpile your roster with incredible talent, you can do that. Guess what? In college football, you can also do that. It's not like the NFL where you are capped and you can't spend more money if you're the Dallas Cowboys than the Cincinnati Bengals or the Miami Dolphins. So I think MLB and having leadership from the MLB is a real positive for college football, because I do think there's some parallels between the two sports. But Brian Seeley now comes over, and you're probably wondering, all right, what is it that the College Sports Commission is going to be? Well, it's a really, really critical component of the House settlement. And it's the part of the House settlement that I am most encouraged by. It's created by the Power Four conferences, the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12. And they're basically going to be tackling the new challenges surrounding college athletics. But the purpose of the College Sports Commission is to, number one, oversee and enforce the terms of the House settlement. Okay, that means that they will be making sure that everything is taken care of from a revenue sharing standpoint. They're going to make sure that the $20.5 million that has been written now into the world, that will be distributed with direct payments to the athletes. That is obvious. So the College Sports Commission will be in charge of that. Number two, they're going to be all over the NIL deals. And I think regulating and, let's be real, scrutinizing name, image, and likeness deals it was desperately needed. I don't know what else to tell you. It was desperately needed, because right now guys are signing NIL deals and they're not really being paid as a result of their name, image, and likeness. They're being paid for what they can contribute on the football field, thus creating a pay-for-play model that I think a lot of people are kind of uncomfortable with. Now, I believe in free market. I think it's great. The guys are getting what they're getting. But when you sign a deal worth six figures to sign 15 football cards, that doesn't feel like fair market value, does it? I mean, maybe in some cases, but in most cases involving college athletes, that is not fair market value. So I think that now creating an enforcement arm of fair market value for NIL deals is really, really important. They have thus developed a new platform called NIL Go, which is developed by Deloitte, and it's going to assess whether or not third-party NIL deals are made with a, quote, valid business purpose, end quote, and do not exceed a, quote, reasonable range of compensation, which is really, really important. Because what we're seeing right now, there's no transparency. There's no means to be able to check and see, all right, who's getting what? Okay, that person is of equal significance or equal popularity. They're making X. This person should also be making X. But hang on a second, this person's making 3 times more than this person when they're actually fulfilling the same responsibility from an NIL standpoint. That is something that I think is really worth exploring and continuing to figure out. So this will be an opportunity to kind of curb the pay-for-play schemes so that all student athletes, they are required to report NIL deals over $600 to NIL Go. But here's the problem. Here's the unforeseen circumstance that surrounds the NIL Go platform. It welcomes the underbelly of college football back into the sport, potentially. I don't know this for sure, but potentially. Because right now, it's free. It's fair. You're allowed to give guys whatever you want to give them. And you do, because you want them to play for your team and you want to win games. But now that every single NIL deal could potentially be scrutinized, it welcomes bad actors back into the game. And if they don't want this NIL deal to be scrutinized, then they'll just pay someone under the table. So that is a concern for me, is that the sport that we know and love for a long time, there was always underbelly of college football. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, there were things that were done in an opportunity to entice players to play at certain places for a very long time. That went away in the NIL era because it was all fair. It was all legal. Well, now it's illegal. So does that now welcome back some of the back alley payments that we once saw in the sport that had kind of gone away for the last few years? The other thing the CSC will be able to do, it'll be able to penalize violations. Now, what will this look like? Will this result in players potentially being suspended for failing to report those NIL deals that they signed? Perhaps. Could it result in universities and football teams not being eligible for the postseason? Could it result in forfeiting games? Perhaps. All these things I think are on the table. But at least now, the one positive when it comes to the CSC, the College Sports Commission, is that we have a little bit of transparency. Now, to us in the public, we're probably not going to have transparency. We're not going to have access to the fine details, the fine print on some of these NIL deals. We're not going to have access to it, but at least somebody will. And we'll be able to at least determine what the market is for some of these players, so there's not constant leverage points and constant opportunities for guys to create, angles against their university for fear of that guy potentially going into the portal. So I think it's good for the school. I think it's good for the collective. And I think in some ways it might be good for the player as well. Because now I know what the market actually looks like. So I can say, all right, well, you know what? This guy's making X. I would like to make X. So here's what I'm worth based on what has been had in other places with players of a similar skill level. So I think it's actually quite beneficial kind of across the board, and it will help bring stability to college athletics. I think it reduces the possibility of future litigation because I think proactively addressing compensation issues is something that could potentially reduce the likelihood of future antitrust lawsuits. I think it could help curb unregulated booster activity. But like I said as well, I don't know that for sure. I think guys could still very easily now get involved and recreate what was the wild, wild west prior to NIL. And then I hope this will help create a competitive balance. Because if everybody's playing by the rules, and I don't anticipate that being the case, if everybody's playing by the rules, then hopefully across the board, we'll see a little bit more parity and that everybody will be kind of playing with the same deck of cards. We'll see if that's the case, but I certainly hope it is. But that's why I'm excited about the new College Sports Commission. Moving on to some football, because how much can we actually talk about the House settlement and College Sports Commission? We want to talk ball. We want to talk games. We talk about playoff format. Yeah, maybe a little bit more in the off-season debate topics. But Ryan Day, head coach of Ohio State, weighed in on 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and why they deserve it. Here's what he had to say to ESPN. Quote, "We're in the Big Ten and we have 18 teams and some of the best programs in the country. I feel like we deserve at least 4 automatic qualifiers. If you don't have those automatic qualifiers, you're less likely to play a game like we're doing this year against Texas because it just won't make sense. If we do, then you're more likely to do that because we play 9 conference games in the Big Ten. The SEC doesn't, so it's not equal." And I actually, coming from Ryan Day's perspective, I completely agree with everything he said. In the event in which you don't have those automatic qualifiers and you need to have the best win-loss record, he's 100% right. Why would you risk playing a great team in the non-conference that could expose you, could beat you? If they beat you, now that's one more loss. Had you played a powder puff team, then you're sitting there at, say, 11-1 as opposed to 10-2, or 10-2 as opposed to 9-3. So yeah, your win-loss record looks a little better. And based on what we learned last year, it doesn't matter who you play in the non-conference. Look at Indiana. If you have a great win-loss record, you're going to make the college football playoff. So Everything that Ryan Day says, I agree with from his vantage point. But if you look at it from another vantage point, let's go back 2 years and look at the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama played Texas, ironically enough. At that time, Texas was in the Big 12. Alabama played Texas in the non-conference. They lost to Texas in the non-conference. They went on to win the rest of their games. They were 12-1. They were the SEC champs. And they made the college football playoff because of their strength of schedule and because of their strength of record. The loss to Texas, albeit discouraging, albeit gut-wrenching in some ways, did not crush their strength of record, strength of resume. Now, you can also use that year and say, well, Florida State should have gotten in. They were 13-0. Their quarterback got hurt. Had their quarterback not gotten hurt, then they would have been in the college football playoff and Alabama would have been left out. All that's completely fair. What I'm suggesting, though, that in the 12-team playoff era, a loss to a great non-conference team might not necessarily be the nail in the coffin for your playoff candidacy. But I also think from Ryan Day's perspective, he's basically following suit with his conference commissioner. Tony Petitti is desperately trying to get 4 automatic qualifiers into the future college football playoff format because he ultimately wants the SEC to play a 9th conference game. I don't blame him at all. His teams are already doing that. Therefore, he wants to put a playoff format in place that's going to basically protect his top 4 teams every single year, regardless of what happens in the non-conference. Totally support Tony Petitti's view of what the college football playoff should look like from the Big Ten commissioner seat. Whereas Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, is sitting there saying, I kind of like the 5+12 model where the 5 automatic qualifiers go to the conference champions of the top 5 conferences. And then there's 11 at-large teams that would be put in place by the College Football Playoff Committee. He's in that boat because the SEC currently plays 8 conference games. That 9th game against a non-conference would result in 9 Power 5 opponents, and then 3 opponents that wouldn't be considered as challenging. So therefore, most SEC teams will go 3-0 in the non-conference against lower-level teams. They'll beat, in some cases, in other cases, not so much. In some cases, they'll beat that Power 5 team they play in the non-conference, and they'll have only 8 really losable games within their own conference. So their records, when lost, will be a little better than teams that would play 9 conference games. That should be somewhat self-explanatory. But I look at the SEC, and I really hope, personally, I hope they adopt that 9th conference game. I want them to do that. I have always said from the very beginning, if you've listened to this show, if you listen to any other platform I've ever been on, the number one problem that I have right now with college football is scheduling inequality. I want everyone to play the same schedule. I wish everybody could play the same challenging schedule, the same level of opponent, the same amount of games against conference teams, the same amount of games against non-conference Power 5 teams. I want everyone to be playing the exact same schedule, but that's not reality right now. And if that means the Big Ten goes from 9 conference games to 8 conference games, then so be it. I'm great with that. If that means the SEC goes from 8 conference games to 9 conference games, so be it. I'm great with that. I just want everyone to play on the same playing field. And that includes Notre Dame in some cases. Like I want Notre Dame to have the same teams that they play every year. They don't have to be in a conference, but I want them to play a schedule that is comparable to everyone else in the sport. That's just what I want, because I think at that point you could fairly measure what teams are because they will have played equal competition. But the reality is this, the SEC, teams 7, 8, 9, 10, now, you might not agree with this, but this is my own vantage point. I think if you talk to insiders and coaches and players, I think if you look at teams 7, 8, 9, 10 in the SEC, they're stronger than teams 7, 8, 9, 10 in the Big Ten in most cases. So the team that finishes, say, 8th in the SEC is probably, in most cases, a little stronger than the team that might finish 8th in the Big Ten. Now, you take the top 2 or 3. So 1, 2, 3 in the SEC, 1, 2, 3 in the Big Ten. I think they're the exact same. And really the last couple of years, the top 3 in the Big Ten has been slightly superior to that of the top 3 in the SEC. Just look at the national championships that were won by Michigan and Ohio State. So I'm fine with automatic qualifiers as long as everybody's playing the same schedule. And from Ryan Day's perspective, I totally support why he feels the way he feels. He wants to continue to encourage high level, highly competitive non-conference games, but he also wants to make sure that his team won't be penalized in the event in which they lose that non-conference game. Because tell me this, do you really think there's a realistic scenario in the near term that Ohio State won't be in the top 4 teams in the Big Ten? I can't envision that. Not right now. Not with how top heavy the Big Ten is right now. So I totally understand his point of view. I totally understand the Big Ten's point of view. But also at the same time, I kind of understand the SEC's point of view as well. So it'll be fascinating to see which continues to play out as they finally start to nail down exactly what the future playoff format might look like. Well, we've done a lot of big picture college football today. House settlement discussion, College Sports Commission discussion, Ryan Day's quote about the Big Ten getting at least 4 automatic qualifiers every single year. So with us doing some big picture topics, we got to dive into a couple games, shouldn't we? So we decided to put together our list this year of the top 10 non-conference games in college football. Number 10, Wisconsin at Alabama. This game will be on September 13th. It's going to be at 11 o'clock local time, 12 noon there in the East Coast. It'll be on ABC, a rare home and home game. This game was awesome last year when Alabama went up to Madison, Wisconsin. They won that game, but man, it was just cool to see those two helmets on the field at the same time. Two proud programs, two traditionally very physical programs. Just a fun matchup there that we will have there in week 3 of the college football season this year. At number 9, we'll go to TCU at North Carolina. This will be Labor Day Monday. Now, this is interesting exclusively for one reason, and it's because Bill Belichick will be patrolling the sidelines for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, I think part of it, those of you that are watching that aren't diehard fans of college football, you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, well, I mean, I want to see Bill Belichick. I want to see him on the sidelines. Like, this is crazy. Guy's got 6 Super Bowls, and now he's coaching college football for the first time in his career. That is intriguing for everybody else, but what's lost in the equation is that TCU, I think, has a chance to be a real player in the Big 12 and a dark horse playoff contender. So a nice matchup and a stern test for Bill Belichick in his first game as the head coach of North Carolina. At number 8, Clemson at South Carolina. This will be the final week of the regular season. And I look at both these teams. South Carolina, I'm not sure they're going to be as good as they were last year on defense, but I think offensively they have a chance to take a significant step forward. And for those of you that have listened to this show the last couple months, you probably know that I think Clemson has a legit chance to start the season in the top 5. And I would not be surprised at all if at season's end, they're number 1, number 2, number 3 in college football. I think they're that good, a legitimate national championship contender, having to go on the road in the final game of the regular season against their SEC foe in state. That's always one of my favorite rivalries, and it will be an awesome one to consume again here in 25. At number 7, Alabama at Florida State. This will be week 1, another great non-conference game. These teams have played in the non-conference before, but most of the time it's been in neutral sites. The last 2 matchups between Alabama and Florida State. 2017, that game was played in Atlanta. 2007, that game was played in Jacksonville. But prior to that, there were 3 games played in Tuscaloosa and or Birmingham. All 3 were Bama home games, 1965, 1967, and 1974. That was back in the Florida State era of anywhere, anytime, any place, didn't matter. This will be Bama's first trip to Tallahassee. And knowing what transpired 2 years ago when Alabama was in the playoff, Florida State was left out, I would imagine there'll be some bad blood on the side of the Seminoles when Alabama runs through the tunnel there at Doak Campbell in Tallahassee. So that game is number 7. At number 6, I love this rivalry. I always have. It's Florida at Miami. This game will be on September 20th. It's an in-state rivalry. Last year, it was week 1, and it was dominated by the Miami Hurricanes. At that point, Cam Ward came right out, asserted himself as one of the best players in the sport. At that time, there were a lot of questions about Florida and whether or not they'd be able to run the gauntlet. Well, fast forward to the end of the year, DJ Lagway emerged as a star for the Gators, and they finished about as strong as you could possibly finish. Well, Miami has restocked and reloaded. Carson Beck is now their starting quarterback. They have great personnel on both lines of scrimmage. Mario Cristobal has a legitimate ACC title contender again this year, at least one of the top 2 teams in the ACC. And I think if you're in the top 2 in the ACC, you're always in the mix for the college football playoff. They nearly made it a year ago. So Florida at Miami on September 20th is our 6th non-conference game that we're looking forward to this year. At number 5, Texas A&M Aggies will travel to South Bend, Indiana. This will be on September 13th. So a lot to look forward to in this one. We had this game week 1 last year. Notre Dame, what became an incredible year for the Fighting Irish. They go down to College Station. They exercise their demons. They get that big win on the road against an SEC team, and they were able to carry over that momentum, not in the following week where they came up short, but they learned from the mistakes of the first week or 2 and became an incredible team as the season went on, culminating in a national championship berth. Now they'll get a chance to play against what should be an improved Texas A&M team in so many phases. Coach Mike Elko enters into the second year. They get everybody back on the offensive line. The offense in general should be excellent. And their quarterback, Marcel Reed, should be a lot more advanced than he was last year. He didn't really even play against Notre Dame in week 1. So now that should be an incredible matchup when the Aggies head to South Bend there in the middle of September. We'll go next to game number 4, the 4th best non-conference game of the season this year. It's Notre Dame at Miami. This is kind of a classic rivalry. Now, people will point to it and say, well, it's not really that much of a rivalry. They don't play that often. There's a lot of tradition surrounding Notre Dame and Miami. We've already talked about why I think Miami's a real contender this year. And anyone that watched Notre Dame last year knows that it's going to be a great opportunity for them to repeat what they accomplished last season. Now, new quarterback under center. We'll see exactly who that is for the Irish. I think it's probably going to be CJ Carr, but we'll see. It'll be his first start on the road in what should be a very hostile environment week 1 with Miami's preseason expectations and with Notre Dame's preseason expectations. So big test early in week 1 for both programs with legitimate national championship aspirations this season. Game number 3. Michigan at Oklahoma. This game will be week 2. This will be September 6th. Second straight year which Michigan is taking on one of the SEC newcomers. Last year they played Texas and Ann Arbor. Now they'll go to Norman, Oklahoma. Well, they'll take on a Sooner team that will have a lot of new faces, but those new faces should be more productive than the guys they replaced from last year, most notably at the quarterback spot where John Mateer, transferring down from Washington State, now he gets his chance to kind of showcase the world what he's capable of, much like Cam Ward did last year when he took the field for the Miami Hurricanes. John Mateer and a bunch of new weapons offensively will be going against a great defense from the Michigan Wolverines. And then on the other side for Michigan, who's their quarterback going to be? Will it be the talented 5-star freshman Bryce Underwood? Will it be Mikey Keene, potentially the veteran that's transferring over? And I think offensively, it'd be hard for me to envision a scenario in which Michigan takes a step back offensively. They should be much better on that side of the ball. And if they are, that could be an incredible matchup there in the early season for both the Big Ten and for the SEC. Moving next to the second best non-conference game of the 2025 schedule, and it's LSU at Clemson. Talked a little earlier about why I think Clemson is a legitimate national championship contender. They have the quarterback back. They got tremendous skill. The offensive line should be excellent. Defensively, they have great players back at all 3 levels. But moving over to the LSU side, Garrett Nussmeier comes back. And there's people that have been surrounding the LSU program, those that have been talking about LSU being around the team and the players. They feel like this could be the year where Brian Kelly really breaks through. Nussmeier, like I referenced, he's now back in his second year as the starting quarterback. They've gone into the portal. They've adequately replaced several spots that needed to be replaced. They're going to be great at wide receiver. Should be pretty good along the offensive line and at running back. And then defensively, second year in Blake Baker's system, will they have a couple tricks up their sleeve against Cade Klubnik and what should be a high-powered offense for the Clemson Tigers? LSU travels from their Death Valley to Clemson's Death Valley. That should be one of the best games of the college football season. And then finally, the best game in the non-conference here in 2025, it should really come as no surprise. It is a rematch from the college football playoff semifinal from a year ago, where the Texas Longhorns will travel to Columbus, Ohio to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. going to be an incredible game. Two new quarterbacks that are very, very highly anticipated debuts. Julian Sand, more than likely for Ohio State, and we already know it's Arch Manning for the Texas Longhorns. Both teams have hopes of winning a national championship, and a big win in week 1 against one of the best teams in the sport should propel them and give them great momentum to take on the rest of their regular season opponents. So that is by far the best game in the non-conference here in the 2025 season. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Continue to encourage all of you to like, to rate, and to subscribe to the show wherever you get the show. We always appreciate the support that you guys show in the comments, in the reviews, in the ratings, in the downloads, which are through the roof. And we always greatly appreciate those of you spreading the word, telling your friends that we're talking college ball here in the summer months, just 4 weeks away from things getting kicked off at Media Days with the Big 12. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.